Alrighty, I'm gonna call the meeting to order for the September 4th, 2025 Lower Downtown Design Review Commission. We're gonna start with introductions, so I started off with Tobias.
Tobias Stroh, I'm a property owner and business owner.
Okay, I'm Marilee Utter, resident and business owner.
Craig Lawrence, owner operator, vice chair.
Nice.
Andy Duckett, MP Preservation Architect and Chair.
Nick Allen, developer.
Byron Zick, architect.
And I'm Brittany Bryant, Denver Landmark Preservation staff.
Alrighty, audio tips for today's virtual participants. Just remember, everybody mute your cell phones. For better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your desktop, laptop, tablet, or mobile device. Click the audio settings to bring up the additional menu, add a background or noise suppression. Test your speaker and microphone, adjust their maximum output volumes. For presenters or public commenters, when it's your turn to speak, mute or unmute, click on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. Expand the menu next to the microphone will reveal additional options. Select your speaker and microphone devices. Test your microphone and speakers, adjust them to adjust the maximum output volumes. If you are still having audio challenge, switch to your phone for audio. Alrighty, first item is, are there any comments for the meeting records for July 10th, 2025 or July 29th, 2025?
That's not for me.
Seeing no comments, we're gonna move into general public comments. Do we have anybody online wishing to speak? Please remember that you've got 2 minutes. Members of the public have 2 minutes for each for comments about historic preservations in general, not to include comments associated with specific projects under review by the LDDRC. If you're gonna speak, click to raise your hand in Zoom or dial 9 for your keypad to raise your hand. If you're joining by phone, do you have any public commenters? Alrighty, so moving into the consent agenda, this week we do not have a consent agenda, so we are gonna move into our design review projects. First project is item number 2025 COA 531 1902 Blake Street. Sorry, processes, our chair will announce the design review item on the agenda in order by address. Commission members will announce ex parte contacts and conflicts of interest. If you have one, we do recommend, or actually we'll ask you to leave the room. Staff will introduce the application and recommend limitation for 10 minutes, 15 minutes for a larger infill. Commissioners may ask questions of staff, then the applicant presentation is limited to 10 minutes or 15 minutes for larger infill. Commission may ask questions of the applicant, and then we will have a session for public comment. Period is 2 minutes per person. If you would like to speak regarding the specific project and you are not part of the applicant team, please click the hand raise button for those calling via phone or dial 9 to raise your hand. If you're having difficulties, we ask you to email landmarks@denvergov.org and make sure you leave your name and number. Staff will have clarifications if necessary, then the commission will deliberate, and then commission will create a motion and vote. Just to reintroduce, the first project on the agenda today is 2025-COA 531 1902 Blake Street. The description is digital marquee signs.
Can you turn your camera on? Oh, never mind. Taylor's gonna do it. Sorry, we switched things.
Okay, so this application is for 2 new electronic message board wall signs at 1902 Blake Street, a contributing structure to the district built in 1925. Here you can just see 2 street views from 1902 Blake Street. At the top, you're looking down 19th towards north towards McGregor Square with Dairy Block on the left. And then at the bottom is just a corner view of Summit Music Hall, this music venue. Who is the applicant for this application? The current style of signage with a marquee wall sign on each elevation of the building, one facing onto Lake Street and one facing onto 19th Street, with a rounded corner projecting sign at the top of the building, has been in place for several years, going back to at least November 2007, according to Google Maps photos when it was Club Bash. The applicants are requesting to replace the manual reader boards, specifically with digital marquee reader boards, for a variety of reasons. They've included safety and then changing them in difficult weather in their letter to the commission. The signage is located at the corner of the structure near the roof line, which stands at approximately 29 feet tall from grade, so you can see here. The applicants have stated that it takes 2 of their employees to change the current signs, which change frequently for different music acts. And they also need a scissor lift and then a really tall ladder each time due to the height of the signs and the structure, which also impedes the sidewalk at times, and it can be dangerous for their employees. So the new digital reader boards would allow the applicants to change the marquee internally and easily without the need for a scissor lift or ladders, and would be a safer option for the employees, would give them better access to changing the sign for the various events. Landmark staff expressed concerns to the applicant about a digital reader sign. As we've seen some around the city that have been seen that flash, blink, fluctuate, or animated. So they did revise their original application to the proposed digital reader board sign to be more static and match the current look of the signage. Next slide. So here on the left, you can just see the 2 proposed building elevations with these new signs. The new signs will actually be slightly smaller in size than the existing reader board signs that are manual, but they will be located in the same location. The new signs are in scale with the building's architecture. They do follow traditional commercial signage patterns. And they will be attached using existing attachment methods, so they will not damage the building and does not overpower the building. So staff felt it met design guidelines 1.1, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, and 1.8. And just wanted to note that the existing corner sign at the top that says Summit will remain as is and is not expected to change. Next slide. So here you can see the proposed design of these new electronic message center signs. The applicants are proposing that the new digital signs match the current manual reader board style by creating a custom background that'll appear to look like the current signs, and by creating a font that matches the current letter styles, as you can see here. This is proposed so that it's clear that the new signs will not flash, blink, or fluctuate and are not animated. And the new signs will meet brightness requirements of the Denver zoning code. Design guideline 1.9 and 3.1 both state not to use internally lit plastic or glowing box, which these are technically, as they will be internally illuminated. However, the proposed 2 new digital electronic message center signs meet many of the other design guidelines and much of these ones, except for those specific points. And they are trying to replicate traditional signage found at this location, just with an electronic version that makes updating the event information safer and more feasible for the business. Additionally, due to the height of the structure and the difficulty of changing these manual signs as a music venue with ever-changing musical acts and events, in this instance and with this particular proposal, staff believes allowing these 2 electronic signs is okay and does meet the design guidelines and is supportive. Therefore, staff is recommending approval.
Thank you, Crystal. Does anybody have any questions for staff?
I do have a few. So you mentioned, it's an internally lit glowing box and that's not compliant. Is there a risk that we're setting kind of a precedent by allowing this to sort of become, established and then having that LCD sign there or LED sign there?
I think that is something we worried about, but I think that's why we were trying to be very clear in our staff report and in what we're saying is that because of the height of the structure and where these are located, we feel that in this particular instance, it would not set a precedent because it's for a very site-specific reason. I think I did mention my staff report. We looked at other just existing signs in the area where they're typically, the marquee would be at the first floor. So you could just kind of walk outside and use those hanging things that change the sign. So in those instances, there don't seem to be any site-specific issues that would cause them to need a different type of sign. So I do not think it would set a precedent.
Also, as we've been advised by legal counsel, nothing really sets precedent. Everything is a case-by-case decision of the commission. Of course, obviously, we want to stay consistent with past decisions, but as Crystal has mentioned, it's a very site-specific condition.
And then, how are we, or how is the city able to enforce that the signage doesn't change or require the applicant to remain look and feel? Because it's just a digital display at that point, and you mentioned it, or the applicant is requesting approval of like 3 to 4 static messages. Are those gonna be submitted, what those messages are, or is there an
No.
approval for that, or so?
No, I mean,
What's keeping
how
them
it
from
functions
just,
now is they change all the time anyway. They could just change the letters. So as long as it remains the way it looks as they've provided, it would be okay. But like say, I was walking down there and I saw they had these fireworks or something, like they've totally changed it, that would not meet their approval. It could be reported, but that's just like with any sign violation. If they put something up that doesn't match what was approved, we could enforce on it.
I mean, this is a new world, right? I mean, the signage code didn't expect this kind of scenario. So, I mean, I appreciate what they're trying to do and the safety and the cost and the labor and all that. So a couple more questions, sorry,
Sure.
but so there's, in my mind, there's a concern with how this is gonna perform longer term. I know they're stating there's a 5-year warranty period and all that, but in our environment, in exterior, with a sign like this, what's gonna happen, with sun shining on that and deteriorating it, with potential burn-in, especially when they're, having static numbering like that, it'll burn in on the display and it might turn pretty unsightly over time. So I'm just wondering whether there was some conversation about different types of digital signage, like, for example, you could have individual letter signage, or I don't know, the old style airport signage type things exist still. I know that are more mechanical in nature, so they just show, again, acts or artists on there.
They didn't discuss those with me. I did talk to them about maintenance. They did, as I said, put in that 5-year warranty. I think the way I was looking at it is that typically signs are up for about 5-ish years anyway. They typically want to update or change. I know that the Summit sign, and it wasn't approved or anything by us because I think it was done beforehand, but you could see through time that that has changed. And even from the Club Bash one, it has been slightly altered over time. So those do change. I think also sometimes we have to take a chance and kind of see how it goes. Like if we did approve it and we find over time that it's not being maintained, that was something I asked. They said that it could be maintained or fixed within 48 hours, which I think is a pretty good turnaround. We have lots of signage that just sits up and doesn't get taken down or fixed. So that is already just an issue that exists overall. So it is kind of like a test if we do approve it to see, are they maintaining it how they said? Will it last? If anyone saw an issue with it, you could call it in just like any other sign. I know that has happened for other digital signs outside of the historic district. There was one on the west end. It was really bright. I used to live at Brooks Tower and it like shined right in there. We all called like, hey, this is crazy. And they fixed that. But it is a changing market and world. And I think individual letters wouldn't really work for this as a music venue because they change so often. A lot of our signage, it's just a business and that is their 1 or 2 signs. this has a different use that requires changing it all the time, so I think in this case, we were trying to be more flexible.
No,
But I
I
like
still mean
your-
changing, I'm
Yeah.
just, what I'm talking about is instead of having one LCD display or LED display, having individual displays for
Yeah.
the letters, for example, so that it would be much easier to replace.
I
and
like the
fix that.
mechanical idea, they did not discuss that with me, so that's maybe a question for the applicant to see if that's something that they had considered.
I think the maintenance question too is more for the applicant as well.
Okay.
And I did want to provide clarity. If you're not familiar with Denver sign code, it is from 1959. She is old.
Right, that's what I was getting at, right? It doesn't, it's really difficult to apply this to this new environment. You know, we want to be understanding of that fact. I mean, it's important to allow this kind of approach at some point. It's just asking to optimize it and make it as good as possible so that, you know, the next person that comes and applies
Right.
hopefully has good precedent where, even though you're saying it's not a precedent, but and then there was one other thing. If there was no sign on the building here and they were applying, the size and scale and everything else is in keeping with signage code, do you know that? Again, this is probably more of a.
That's more of a
That'd be
zoning
yours, it's a
question,
zoning question, yeah.
so I think for us, because it's existed, this site has been kind of a music venue for so long, it seemed appropriate to replace with the same. And if it was a different use or doing some different type of signage, that might change.
Yeah, so, there are not good guidelines for marquee signs. We
Yeah.
don't have many marquee signs left, but historically, if you pull historic photos of this area, there are marquee signs everywhere. So I think for us, it was a little bit too about balancing that sign tradition, as Crystal mentioned, with also the new technology and the fact that our sign code again is from 1959. So it is a lot of unknowns here, to be quite frank. But I know Crystal worked really hard on getting the best possible digital sign here.
I have a question, just a clarification on the sign itself. It's only to be used to announce acts. If they have a
Yes.
blank line, they can't put in some political statement or something.
It's supposed to be the dates for the events and who is playing the event, and that's it.
I just have one question, Crystal. Thank you for your work on the application. In the application materials, I had a similar concern to Tobias about the illumination levels. I think that there is a bit of a discontinuity between the code requirements, which is 25 watts per bulb, to translate to this particular requirement. So I'm curious if there was any dialogue about how the illumination levels will be met.
There was a NITS comment
Yeah.
on that.
Oh, what?
The NITS.
Oh,
the
it
NITS,
is.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
I did try to talk to them about that as landmark staff in our guidelines. We just talk about it not being too bright, but we don't have actual levels and things. That's more of the zoning code. So that's why I asked them to include that information.
Got it.
But they did tell us that, you know, if they needed to turn it down or put it lower, they could.
Mhm.
And similar to the other instance I told you, like there have been instances where like, hey, it's too bright. That's also kind of why I showed the street views. Because there is residential a block or two down, but it's pretty down. It's mostly commercial on that street and bars and things, so I don't think it would affect that, but they do have in their application, they could turn it down, so I think that's more a question.
Okay, thank you.
So Crystal, I have one clarification
Sure.
question. The existing sign, the existing marquee sign, is that internally lit now or?
Yes,
Okay, so it's
it
already.
already is,
Okay.
yeah. I thought about that too after, when I was writing my notes, I was like, it kind of is already turned, I mean, it's been there since 2007-ish. They just
And-
changed the faces, it looks like.
And does the city have the capability of regulating? For instance, Marilee had a great question about if the sign was blank, someone didn't say, you know, free Ferris or something on it. It had to be, it had to keep basically the letters and graphics that are being approved. They can't do any kind of logos or political ads or anything like that. It's only needs to look like a marquee sign.
It should, but if you even look on, I wanna say like the November 2020, it's like stay home, be safe, or something like that, like, could someone just change it and put whatever letters? Sure. They're not supposed to, but
But what I'm saying is the city's gonna have the ability to regulate, like if someone comes down and sees, a Starbucks logo on it, they can be like, hey, you can't.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
and that's not allowed. It has to, also that's offsite advertising.
I'm just saying, if a logo shows up for Nike or something, it's like.
Yeah.
They know that it's to display the shows that are coming, the times that they're there, and that's it.
Yeah, and I cited at least to them when because I've been talking to them off and on for about 3 years now. And, our concern was more like the signs that are at the Fillmore, how they're always damaged and they're kind of flashing, and we were like, we really don't want that. That's what our concern is.
Okay.
And so they are very aware of that. So I think, maybe talking to them about it, we could also, I don't know if we can add conditions that really limit what they can say, but content of what should be there, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was getting at, is if we wanted to add a condition to the approval.
I think it could be, a condition could be marquee style letters, but you cannot say what it can say specifically. They are allowed to.
Yeah.
As long as if it's a marquee letter that is approved as part of this packet and they're showing, so here's their custom font down here at the bottom. They're using that. That is within their First Amendment rights
And
to do so.
question is, would any content would be
Yeah.
regulated by any other zoning codes and other
Yeah.
things like that? That's all taken care of. Our purview is just, does this fit the district? Does it meet the guidelines?
Yes.
And does it contribute to the district?
Right, and just for like any type of these signs, at least in our district, if you approve this and you walked by and saw it was not this style, it was something different, it has like explosions and flashing things, like you could call it it would be not following what was approved.
All right, any other questions for staff? All right, do we have the applicant available?
Alex, you should be able to unmute yourself, and if you want to turn on your camera, that's up to you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
We can. Good morning, Alex. You've got 10 minutes?
Okay, thank you very much, Crystal. I'm gonna turn my camera off here because it's showing up kind of wonky, but Crystal, thanks for the introduction, and I think you've pretty much captured most of what we had discussed in our application. So a couple of questions I'll try to answer here. So the first one was about if we had explored using a mechanical type sign, and I'm not quite sure what that's in reference to. What I can say is that we're extremely familiar with using these type of digital message centers. We've been installing them across across Colorado for the past 25 years, really when they first became a technology that we wanted to use, or that that became popular and reliable. And so that was the type of signage that we decided to propose, that we had discussed with Summit. These signs are extremely reliable. I know there was another question there, if potentially what happens with maintenance, and would the text perhaps burn in if it's left in a static state on the board. A display like this is actually, it's more stressful to flash images than it is to leave it in a static state this way, just because of the stress that it puts on the LEDs. So typically these boards are rated for 100,000 LED hours, which is about 10. It's about a 10-year lifespan. we've seen these displays last for, you know, much longer than that. I could give examples around town of boards that have been up for longer periods than that. Without the, you know, text being seared into it, or still, you know, they still present very well, and they're still you know, a nice product. So that's why we looked at this type of a display. And I don't know if the customer would be into looking at other options, but I think that what their intent was to use the display with the capabilities that it has to recreate the you know, the text the way the summit sign with the text the way it is a very traditional way that they've images or text has been displayed on signs for many years, right? And so it becomes like, it's kind of iconic into a music venue like this. And so the display that we proposed is something that can capture that, you know, can capture that look. And I don't know if we went to you know, like a single digit red LED or something that was kind of more like a time ticker, if we'd be able to kind of recapture the essence of the marquee type sign that they're trying to do. As far as the brightness level, that the nit level is a factory setting. It can also be adjusted out in the field, but typically what we would do is we would request a certain level to be set at the factory. The board comes out, it has a light sensor on it and an ambient light sensor, and then it adjusts to make sure that it doesn't go over a certain output level. So on a really sunny day, it obviously needs to shine much brighter so that it can be seen. If it was dim, it would kind of wash out in the light. So during the day, it's at a certain level, and then as you know, night falls or as the lights get dimmer, the ambient light it dims at the same level so that it's not something that's distracting or shining too brightly. I don't know. I think that answers the questions that I heard there, just from the panel. If there's any other questions that I could answer about the display or the maintenance or the light level, I'd be happy to do it.
Got everything, Alex? You good?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Alex, the applicant?
Just a thank you for answering pretty much everything I asked very comprehensively. Thank you.
Sure.
So Alex, I have a couple of verification questions. Is the intent to reuse the similar type of support mechanism? I know in the packet it says you're going to reuse the existing straps. I just want to verify that that was the goal.
It is, yeah. So that's just real quickly, it's called a parapet clamp, is industry term. And so that prevents the board from needing to be anchored into the brick, because I know it's a historical building. And so basically it would be able to be anchored at the backside of the wall, and we're going to use the existing anchor points so there'd be no additional damage to the wall. So it'll hang in the same manner without having to drill new holes.
And how do you plan to get power and data to it? I'm assuming it's pretty discreet, but it's going to be from the backside, probably through a mortar joint, or is there already power to it?
There's already power powering the existing board, so I believe we're going to need to pull in other circuits and meet the power requirements, but we'd use the existing conduit pathway.
Perfect. So you're going to reuse the existing power?
Yes.
Well, pathway.
Yes.
Alrighty. Any other questions before we move on to public comment? Okay, seeing none, or do we have any public comment on this project? Alrighty, hearing none, I'm going to move into deliberation. What is everybody's thoughts?
Seems to meet all the requirements and guidelines. Seems like a good solution to solve some problems for the applicant.
I think I don't know if we should amend or put a stipulation on there that the graphic will match what the existing sign is, basically, because it was a little bit vague in the application to me, where it says 3 to 4 different, you know, images that they're requesting to be approved. And
yeah, the one thing I did see is that they did have the standard font, which we can make as either it's per the documents in the presentation application, or could call it out. Any other thoughts?
Since they have the font in the application and they have a couple of representations of what it could look like, I personally don't think we need to put in any additional conditions for that. Give them the flexibility to work within the application, because I think the application is the only thing in my mind that it's conflicting with is the internally lit box, which is outmoded and outdated for this type of sign. So to me, it's in compliance. I don't see a need for a condition.
Okay. Anybody else? Seems like we're-
I'm kind of inclined to agree with that. I think it's the issue at hand more is what is the definition of an internally lit box? And I think we're living in a time where that's a bit, you may need some clarity. Since, what'd you say, 1957,
59, I think.
59?
Great year for sign codes.
Are we ready then to move into a motion?
Yeah, I would make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
I move to approve application number 2025-COA-531 for the 2 digital wall signs at 1902 Blake Street as per design policy standards and guidelines 1E, 1.1, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, 3.1. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Nick. Do I have a second? I'll second. Thank you, Tobias. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion approves unanimously. So moving on to item number 2, 2024 COA 960-1550 Market Street for canopy over outdoor dining area. Good morning,
everyone.
Amy.
Good morning. Amy Amadon, representing Landmark staff. I'm sorry I can't be there with you today to present this project. We're talking about 1550 Market Street, particularly an outdoor dining area proposed for STK Restaurant. Half of you, I think, were on the commission when this came before you in December 2024. So this slide shows the building, which is a large project that spans almost the length of the block face between 15th and 16th. And the red arrow is pointing to a temporary outdoor dining canopy that was in place at one time for the restaurant, as they have endeavored to have this kind of outdoor amenity for their business. We're talking about a replacement of that situation. And again, in December 2024, this project came before the group. And at that time, a railing and a more formalized outdoor dining area was approved, but a proposed canopy, which is what we're going to talk about today, was not approved. Next slide, please. This is a rendering showing the proposed canopy that we're discussing. One thing I do want to be clear about from the start is that this building is in a special district, or at least a portion of the building is in a special district. The tallest portion is. And those districts are generally identified as a way for commissions and decision makers to allow additional height and density in certain areas of lower downtown when an approval is granted by a supermajority vote of a board. The important thing to know here is because part of this project is in a special district, the rules of the special district apply to the whole discussion. And we actually need 6 members to agree to allow the proposal to go forward. There are only 6 of you present, so you need a unanimous vote for this project today for it to be approved as designed. So again, here's an illustration of the proposed canopy. And since the discussion in December, the applicant has reduced the size of the canopy. Some of the reasons why it was not approved last December were that there was some uncertainty about whether Dottie would allow the extent of the encroachment, uncertainty about how the structure would drain, and some members did not feel the design guidelines were met. So in response to that, the applicant has done a few things. First of all, they have secured Dottie encroachment approval. And they have also reduced the length of the canopy by 2 feet 8 inches approximately. I'm sorry, that's the depth. They've reduced the depth of the canopy by approximately 2 feet 8 inches and reduced the length by about 9 feet 4 inches. The footprint of the canopy has been reduced from about 950 square feet to 600 square feet. So the response to the previous concerns was to reduce the size of the structure. They also have more clearly illustrated, and I'll show you some sections in a moment, some internal gutters that will bring water from the roof down under the sidewalk to the curb. We'll see also in some of the additional drawings that there will be light fixtures and outdoor heaters hanging from the underside of this canopy. Next slide, please. This plan view shows you with the red bubbles some of the dimensional changes that have been accomplished. Next slide, please. And here's an elevation view. As discussed in the staff memo, in general, staff does support outdoor dining. It enlivens the streetscape. It has a lot of benefits for downtown. We have no objection to the premise of what the restaurant is trying to accomplish here. Our concern with the canopy is that it does not, in our findings, meet the design guidelines because of the way it extends across the facade without really regard for fenestration, symmetry, vertical columns, and things like that. Understood that this is the tenant's allowed area to provide their outdoor dining, but in our opinion, the design guidelines call for a canopy like this to respond to the architecture of the building. Next slide, please. Here you see the entire project in elevation and the design guidelines that we're concerned with. We're looking at this canopy as a form of an awning, and the guidelines talk about, again, sort of being tied to fenestration, providing shade and shelter where fenestration occurs. Awnings are to be designed as integral elements of the building facade, and a continuous band of awning should not obscure architectural details. Next slide, please. Here's a section showing you the canopy projecting over the approved outdoor railing. And again, it is not as deep as it was shown in the original proposal. We provided illustrations of the hanging light fixtures and the heaters. Next slide, please. So as was the case in December, staff recommendation is denial. Again, we do want to support this use as a benefit to the streetscape. This particular block could use some activity, and the applicant does have the right to create the outdoor dining area and use umbrella tables and things like that, which we understand isn't their preference. But as designed, we are still unable to find that the design guidelines are met. So again, it requires a unanimous vote of those present today in order to approve this, and that's the staff recommendation.
Great, thank you, Amy.
I have a clarification. It's not just to approve, it's to pass a motion successfully, whether that's
To take any
denial,
action.
approval,
Yes.
condition.
Thank you, Amy. Do we have any questions for staff? Tobias?
So you showed the temporary enclosure, and I apologize, I didn't make it past the building to take a look at it. Is that still currently there, or is it not? Is it not there now?
I don't believe so, but the applicant should clarify that.
And then that temporary enclosure had aspects of vertical enclosure to it, I believe, right? So it extends the seasonality. Is this something that for the application in front of us is going to be a potential or an option in the future as well? And what might that look like, or how would that work?
That hasn't been brought up at all, and certainly would require additional review and discussion by Dottie, I assume. Enclosing the area is an entirely different concept. That is not what has been suggested.
Okay.
My question is, I appreciate the concept of respecting the architectural design of the building, looking for fenestration and natural boundaries for this. How could that possibly be done? If they extended it longer, would that help?
Well, you can see in this illustration that kind of in the center of the canopy, it's actually covering an entry point and not outdoor dining. So there may be ways that the extent of the structure could still be reduced, different ways they could perhaps articulate or design it so that it was more responsive to these features of the building. But we aren't proposing a specific solution, only stating it does not meet the design guidelines.
Right. But there are alternatives that they could consider.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Well, there's some conflicts in some of the renderings. Some show their sign up above there. I just want to clarify that there will be a separate submittal for a signage review, right? If that was.
Yes.
Alrighty, anybody else? Nick?
I'm just kind of going through and maybe missing the structural, it looks like there's columns for the renderings. You've got a vertical column at one end holding up part of it. It's primarily supported by steel angles in other places. Is that correct?
I think that's something for the applicant to explain how the structure is supported. They, I think, had indicated in the application that they are waiting to take it to that level of design until they have received a conceptual approval here.
Okay.
That's, any other questions? Do we have the applicant available?
Michael?
Hello,
Is
yes. I've had to unmute my audio. I apologize. Thank you for having me. My name is Michael Gentili. I'm with Innovation Design and Architecture, the architectural firm representing the STK Steakhouse.
Michael, can you please your address, please?
Yes, this is for 1550 Market.
Okay, keep going. Sorry.
So I hope to answer all your questions. Thank you, Amy. You did a great job of representing it. I want to address your concerns. And I guess I will start by saying that this had been fully structurally designed previously. And then when it was denied, we want to move forward with the conceptual approval. But the concept that has been reviewed by vendor manufacturer is that steel post would be on the backside, building side, resting on the sidewalk, attached to the building at various points, and they can have forward angles that an aluminum. The system is actually aluminum, can kind of sleeve over the structure and be supported by steel. So that is possible within the pictures that you're seeing. And those steel posts are shown in the renderings. I understand the biggest concern is the continuity. I think looking at this elevation, I guess I'd like to talk about aligning with the building. As an architect, I feel like this is a clean solution that does meet that requirement. So we went with this height because it aligns with the first mullion and the existing storefront. There's already a dark bronze band at that height, so that's to try to take care of the height. As Amy mentioned, this is the sort of allotted footprint as it relates to an interior tenant space. So the tenant space, the restaurant actually does cross the building pretty much continuous with what you're looking at the exterior. So if we go left to right, you see basically there's you know, about 12 feet of railed dining. That would be where the chairs and tables are. Then you continue and you have basically the exit on this side of the building. From this portion of the building, you exit into that railed dining. Then you continue, you have more railed dining until you have the main entry of the building. Now, the main entry of the building, I think at some point we had done studies where we raised or lowered it. That could be done, but I feel like the continuity and the continuous nature of this actually does tie it together and help it relate to the changes in facade and changes in storefront. Then as you continue to the right, you see another door. That is actually a separate dining. So in the middle, what I'm describing is you enter into the main entrance into the restaurant here. And then the railed dining are on the left and right. That is our intention to provide cover, weather cover, extend the season through having the heaters and rain protection. In terms of the continuous nature of it, I'd like to look at the first slide, if I could, Amy, where you show the other side of the building, which has a very expansive, continuous canopy coverage. I don't know if it's possible just to.
Working on it. It takes a second.
That's fine. So on this first slide, I just wanted to look at that far left. You know, this is not our space, doesn't relate to us, but there is this sort of expansive green canopy structure. So I feel like the continuous line actually helps us and doesn't hurt us. This is not that long by comparison of some other facades that I had found photos for. And I think the continuous nature of it actually connects and creates a singular concept. And then I guess in the notes, I did see that there was some comment about the covering of architectural elements. I think it's 7'2". That has been confirmed to be approved by Doty. I don't think that it will or does from the streetscape cover the architectural elements. I think if you have any distance from the building, it again will help unify, create a single space. The signage is by separate permit. It was really just shown as a way to identify the main entrance that, you know, that will be pursued separately. So if I didn't answer any questions, of course, I'll be happy to try to answer your questions, but I do know that this can be structurally sound and engineered. The client just doesn't want to invest more thousands of dollars into that until there's sort of a proven direction, because the nature of structural engineers is they only engineer a system as it designed. So here we're looking, we see the vertical post in the back that can, I'm told, can be a structural system. It's our goal to stay clean, architectural, and I guess it is worth mentioning in contrast to talk about the alternative, which would be a plethora of umbrellas and potentially those gas heaters. And I just don't think that that is the preferred aesthetic from the owner's perspective and from the city's perspective. This would be a much larger cost, but that is done, of course, to try to create a clean architectural look, to add to the streetscape instead of really create visual clutter. That's the alternative that we're trying to avoid.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Any other, are you finished?
Yes, I'm finished. Like I say, if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to try to comment on those. We really do feel that it is lines with the building, and having a continuous is useful in this case.
Alrighty, opening up to questions from commissioners.
Sure, I had one question, just given where it is, it looks like there would be removal of some of there's little ornamentation on those columns. I don't know if any of you have looked at the street view, but there's sort of some applied metal features that run on some of these columns. It looks like one was removed to put in one of the STK signs, so it doesn't look sort of structural or otherwise essential to the building, but I don't know if that was discussed at all with staff along the way, of any kind of concern with that.
Are you referring to the light fixtures, the sconces?
Well, there's sconces, and then below the sconces, kind of in line with the mullion, as I think it appears your canopy would go, there's some kind of, I don't know, semicircular little ornaments.
I think,
Steel, are those?
I think they're coverings for signage and lights, but I'm just pulling it up so we can all look at the same thing.
J-Box covers or something.
Very elaborate J-box covers.
Cause I see one, one of them was removed for this sort of butcher knife STK sign, but
I'm actually not sure what those are. To be honest with you.
That
just
right.
curiosity
That
as much as anything.
I don't know what those are, but we are in line with those.
Michael, thank you for your application. Couple of questions for you. It was a little bit hard to tell from the application, and I apologize if I missed it, but I'm curious about what the horizontal covering consists of. I've heard that it's supposed to intend rain protection, but it appears to be horizontal louvers. But I'd love some clarification on that. And then the other question I had for you was what the limitations of the structural arrangement are for the canopy trellis system that you're proposing. I see a number of horizontal elements that I'm wondering if you could explain, any reasoning or the rationale for how you place those in relationship to the building facade, and any additional information on the limitations of the proposed structure, if possible.
Yeah, maybe an elevation view or a view where we can see the verticals. So they are, if you look, they are arranged in line with mullions. And in some situations, there's two. That it would be required. One would be for a steel interior. With the steel interiors, I understand this could extend, the depth could be increased, but right now at 7 foot depth, basically the vertical steel would be able to support the 7 foot depth. That steel is inside. I don't know if we have the sections that were at the end of my package, but there are sections of the louvered system, the mechanical system. No,
The commission has your entire packet,
Mhm.
if
Okay.
you want to reference a page.
I think it was 5.2 from my memory. I'm sorry, I don't have it up, but towards the end, PL 5.1 or PL 5.2, there's a section
Yeah.
of the system showing how it has an internal gutter, and in some locations, the verticals would have steel inside. And so again, it's an aluminum, dark bronze in color, but an aluminum canopy system that sleeves over a steel support. I guess even the rendered view, because that elevation didn't have color, the rendered view could give you a sense of the quantity of verticals.
Right.
So-
Yeah, I think I understand that. I'm wondering if you have control of the spacing over the horizontal elements, and I'm curious if the louver system, and again, apologize if I missed a note, but if the louver system is intended to provide rain protection or primarily just for shading. So I think those are my two remaining questions.
Okay, yes, so it is designed for rain protection. The louvers, I think on that 5.1 or 5.2, if you've confirmed, you can see that like a system section.
Yeah.
Those are mechanical louvers, and when they're mechanically flattened in line, they do provide rain protection, and then they collect the rain and bring it into the band. The perimeter band is a gutter, functions as a gutter. Then that gutter connects to a downspout that is internal in the one of the vertical, or two or three of the verticals.
Okay, I understand that now. Thank you. That's helpful.
And then the heaters would provide heat for colder weather.
Is that your last question?
I think I'm all right. Yeah, thank you.
Tobias,
Yeah,
looks like you've got some.
I'll tack on a little bit to that. I mean, I kind of had a similar question in terms of the structural considerations, but more in regards to whether you would have more flexibility. It looks like, just looking at the plan view of it, there's a certain, are there engineering considerations as to why the individual sections are the lengths they are, or where did that originate from?
It originated from trying to relate it to the columns and or storefronts. The posts were placed by design to relate to the building.
I'm asking about the, like, if you have a roof, if you think about a roof view, there's segments, and I don't see the relation to the facade there. So I'm wondering whether there were other considerations at play, whether the system just doesn't allow it from an engineering standpoint, or whether you would have more flexibility to relook at that.
There is flexibility to look at that. There actually was intention to design in a line and make transitions at significant building elevation material changes. So it's divided into three sections, namely around the main entrance. So having one at the main entrance, one on the left dining and one on the right dining, as it related to the vertical facade of the building. It was attempted to be related to that, but there is flexibility.
Kind of tacking on to that, can you explain the, I mean, I think I heard you say you felt like the continuous and larger scale, you were justifying that by the fact that there's an awning along 16th that, is also contiguous. But is there any other reason as to why? So there's in your application, you're stating, large intent of this is, of course, to provide additional seasonality and protection for patrons and staff in terms of servicing the outdoor seating. But is there, you know, as part of that, you're including this coverage over the entry to the restaurant, and I'm failing to kind of understand that. So is there a reason for that? You know, because you have two access points into the outdoor seating from the interior, so you don't really need to, I feel you wouldn't need to cover the entry as well, if that makes sense.
I just putting the
Looking for a justification on that.
awning.
Well, the
on the corner.
justification is that that's actually part of your guidelines, is that is the intended goal of awning canopy coverage is to protect at entrances. So that it makes it continuous, which I'm suggesting supports a continuous look. It kind of unifies the space. I think to have a broken pattern left or right in front of the various colored bricks would detract. So, I mean, that is a aesthetic or design decision, but namely, it's because the guidelines describe that awnings should do that. And also, I think it contributes to the overall improved aesthetic.
I mean, I'll wait for comment.
We can have that deliberation. Any other questions, Tobias, or was that your last one?
I mean, this is more of a just a general comment. I mean, first of all, you know, kudos for being patient on this and continuing, because obviously it is a better solution still than the, you know, temporary tent that used to be there. And we need the restaurants downtown, and we don't want to, you know, lose any more. So I think it's an important consideration. But in terms of, you know, if and when you're coming back in front of us, just a suggestion to potentially, if you can sort of condense and you know, streamline the submission maybe, because there are a lot of rendering views here and there's conflicts between some of them. They're not matching, I noticed. So it becomes this where's Waldo thing for us to kind of figure out, well, which is it? So just that's just a suggestion, you know, hopefully that can help you, you know, for future submission.
Thank you, Tobias. Hey, no. I have one question for you, and I think I understand it, but is this system meant to be independent of the building structure? It seems like the columns are close to the face of the building, but the system itself is going to cantilever out from those columns.
It will attach to the building.
Okay, we'll have an attachment.
Yes.
Okay.
Are new foundations needed for these columns, or do they sort of sit on the existing sidewalk?
They'd sit on the sidewalk.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, do we have any people from the public that would like to speak on this application? Okay, don't have any public speakers. Okay, gonna move into our deliberation. What does everybody think?
So it seems like we have two policies to contend with, right? There's the 7.1.1 design requirement that awnings shall be designed as integral elements of the building facade. And we have 7.1.2 placement, which is a continuous band of awning should not obscure architectural details. To me, this is just speaking from my interpretation of the policy, is that I don't fully agree that the canopy is obscuring architectural details. I think that the character of the existing facade still does come through and is pretty evident outside of the proposed canopy. So The thing I'm personally on the fence about is the requirement that awnings shall be designed as integral elements of the building facade. I think that there are elements that do, and then there are other elements that could be more thoroughly integrated into clear vertical arrangement of the existing facade. So that's, I guess I just wanted to throw that out maybe as a place to start deliberations.
I think that for obscuring architectural elements, I think it absolutely does. There are a series of sconces located on the vertical columns that are above the canopy, and those are down lighting. When you put that canopy in, you're gonna lose the natural rhythm of the light. So we're obscuring a significant part of that facade through the addition of those, plus the removal of what looks like those brackets look like they were designed for some sort of blade sign type approach. So all those come off, and now we have holes in the building as well where those have to be sealed. But I think it does obscure the clarity of the architectural design by interrupting the hierarchy of the verticality. I think on the other facade with the continuous glass canopy, that one works because it's inset and separate, and we don't have the hierarchy of vertical brick being interrupted. So it works within an inset, so it's a secondary element. Where this is bridging across with no regard to the existing architecture of the building. So I think in that sense, it's not only obscuring the details of the light and the brackets by removing the brackets, but it's also obscuring the clarity of the design. I believe also that, you know, the character of the red brick facade and the darker facade are very different. They're detailed differently. In the red brick facade, you have exposed fasteners and all its steel detailing. You've got expressed flanges, things like this. And in the dark brick facade, you have none of that. It is very clean. And the dark brick facade could support the articulation of this canopy and its sleekness and cleanliness because it's of the character of that portion of the building. But when you pass through the zipper element and come over to the red brick, it's completely out of character. So I think, you know, from both of those, thank you for citing those two portions of the code. I think it fails both of those and is detrimental to the overall character of that building.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's certainly very challenging because there's a need to cover those outdoor seating areas in some way, and there will be a conflict with the building in some way, you know, still remaining. I think a part that might help is the scale aspect of it too, of it being more subservient to the overall building versus making such a strong statement by this continuity there. I think that's actually, the continuity is actually an argument against it. You know, I mean, that works along 16th Street, but here it would be better if it's broken up and scaled down overall and really focused on the outdoor seating. And I don't know, I wanted to just, I think you guys probably remember, but we already had an application for the corner retail space that we approved of, I think, a few weeks ago for another restaurant space. So just thinking of the overall building situation too, making sure that each of these tenant spaces can be somewhat subservient to the bigger picture of the architecture and design, I think would be important in conjunction with the considerations that you just mentioned, Greg.
Thank you, Tobias. Any other comments? It seems like we're leaning towards a.
Yeah, I wanna just for the group kind of ask an opening question, like how, in general, how do we feel about the height vertically of where this thing sits? You know, I agree completely. I think it's very difficult to have continuity. You hit on this in your questions. As you cross that zipper, you have a different horizontal sort of module. You have a different condition with the exposed steel on the red brick building. That makes it very difficult to cross that zipper in sort of a harmonious way. And so I think what I'm hearing is that horizontal nature is where we're struggling the most. But I want to make sure as we're providing thoughtful guidance, like height wise, I can see the logic of the height, you know, and sort of that intimate height. If you put this thing up at the same level as Morgan Stanley, I think you lose that, and not to mention you're gonna run into more issues with the sconces. I don't know that I struggle as much with those little, you know, with the brackets. One has been removed for sign, they're clearly there, I think, for tenant signage opportunities, so I think there's probably a way to manage that, or stow them away in case this thing goes, you can put them back on the building, something like that, but I do agree there's some discontinuity between even the right edge and seeing a column at the corner, and then I see a cantilever at the left edge, and I'm just not, I can very much appreciate being an owner and having to spend money on design, that you don't wanna overdo it without approval of the concept, but I think there is some work to really understand structurally how this thing is staying up. So my guidance, I guess, to the applicant would be, you know, like, I think that module and that thoughtfulness horizontally is really worth more study, and the height feels like it may be able to be, feels relatively appropriate for the type of use that's being proposed.
So if I'm hearing the discussion correctly, I'm just trying to give the owners or the designers some guidance. Is the issue the module of the red brick versus the darker brick and the zipper, or is it more in relation to the actual brick pilasters? I just don't want the designer to spin off and focus on the wrong thing.
I think that's my personal thoughts. That's difficult to answer. I think it's a both, but maybe one or the other.
Okay.
Because right now we have a single solution presented that is spanning
It
everything.
spans the whole.
It's difficult to say that if there was a simple break or a simple separation between the two sides of the zipper, if that would be successful, maybe it would.
Okay.
Or if there needs to be an acknowledgement to verticality.
So it's really an either or, and it needs to be studied and worked out with staff. It's either, it could be the red and brown versus, or it could be pilaster. The issue is it's not relating to the architecture itself.
That's exactly my opinion, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're going to be battling that issue that, like I've said before, right? You are gonna have conflict. I mean, also to Nick's point, you know, so I mean, just to kind of maybe provide a little bit more guidance or sort of second what Nick was saying. I mean, I feel that I don't have a strong opinion on the height, the way it's said. I think that's a workable solution that you kind of have to deal with. I mean, there's also functional considerations if you put it way up there. And then, as I said before, I feel the subservient manner of it to the overall design is key to me. I think that, you know, less could be more here, because you're gonna deal with conflicts, and then it's critical how you detail those conflicts. So if you're removing those plate sign covers, how do you address that and clean that up and not make it look like it's a patch or an afterthought, or, you know, that kind of approach. So I mean, hopefully that's a helpful additional information for that.
Seems like we're moving towards a motion. Do we have any other comments or discussion items before we move into a motion?
I just agree. I mean, I'm eager to get a permanent solution in there because it will look a lot better than what's there now.
Okay.
I like the clean look. I think it's a little bit of a tough design to not interfere with the building. Nonetheless, I'd like to see another take on it.
Okay. So if we're moving towards a motion, remember that we need to have a supermajority, either approval or denial, in order to pass. So does anyone want to try a motion?
Go ahead. So I move to deny an amendment to 2024 COA 960 for the proposed canopy lighting and heaters at 1550 Market Street as per design policy standards and guidelines 5.3, 7.1, 7.2, and 10.4 from the design guidelines for the Lower Downtown Historic District, 4.30 from the Denver guidelines for landmark structures and district in the section on sidewalk cafes from the design guidelines for lower downtown streetscape. Presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Tobias. For clarification, did you mean application or amendment?
I think it's an amendment to an
Amendment
existing.
Okay,
because
okay.
they have the
I'm just
approval
looking
for
at-
the railing, so it's-
Yes.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Marley, thank you. All those in favor?
I,
Any nay, any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, that is the last application. Seeing no business items, there is a discussion item going to be presented by Abby and Becca.
Yep, I'm here in person and Becca is online.
PowerPoint, so 1 second.
So Becca and I are here today because we just thought it would be great to share with you kind of what else Landmark has going on. I know you tend to be, hyper focused on, downtown design and wanted to just give you an idea of what else we have going on and kind of where we're at with our ongoing Denver in Context project. So next slide. So this is a project that's been going on since 2022. Just going to give you a quick evolution of what we've been doing, some of our lessons learned, and then the community recommendations we've seen so far. Go to next slide. So this is the second in our Denver in Context series. The first one was Denver's Hispanic, Latino, and Chicano context. This context, as I said, started in second half of 2022. The goal of the context is to recognize and honor all of those who've been part of Denver's history, celebrating diverse cultures and acknowledging tragic histories. So it's part of an effort to really broaden, our sense and make sure we're sharing the history of all of Denver's communities. This effort came out of our updates that we did to our ordinance, where we were looking at expanding our criteria for designation. So we're trying to make sure that all of our designated sites in Denver represent all of our communities and all of Denver histories, and added new cultural criteria to our designation. And then part of that, we're working with communities and collecting, and kind of partnering with communities to get more histories written. So goals of the project, really connect with communities, identify significant places, elevate and share community stories, and then for each one, produce a thematic context. Next. So at the beginning, this project had a much smaller scope than it has now. We anticipated that it was going to be a 2-year project, that we just had basic grant funding from the National Park Service, National Trust, as well as some support from Denver Mountain Parks to provide a historic context. So we were just going to hire a consultant to do a context, and then we were going to write a national register designation to go along with that. But the project soon expanded as we started working with the community. So next slide. We realized that this was a community that was going to be, had particular challenges, and that we really needed to allow a lot of time to fully develop authentic relationships with the community. So we quickly realized that we shouldn't be trying to do these so quickly, and it was worth the time to really take longer and really build the relationships before we moved forward, and to be able to have the community shape the context here. What does the community want out of this project? What kind of context do they want? What, how do we make it reciprocal and make sure that it's a partnership? Some of the particular challenges for this context is the fact that we have a really diverse American Indian population in Denver, with more than 200 tribal nations living in the, members from more than 200 tribal nations living in the Denver area due to the urban relocation program that started in the early 50s. And it's a community that has so many reasons to mistrust government. There is Denver's role in the Sand Creek Massacre, which is still a very difficult issue to deal with. City hasn't done a lot, so we didn't have a lot of existing relationships to build on. And just kind of defining a timeline and geographical boundaries was particularly challenging for this. We started out thinking we were really just looking at the footprint of Denver, and we soon realized that was really impossible, and we needed to look at kind of the larger, cultural landscape of kind of the whole Denver Front Range area. Next slide. So we put the kind of project out for requests for proposals, and we were really looking for a partner to consult with that both had representation from the community and was experienced doing historic context and met the requirements of our National Trust Grant. We, through our initial RFP process, didn't have anyone that met both of those requirements. And so what we ended up doing was kind of taking on a matchmaking role. We found a cultural research firm, ERO, that was interested in the project. And then we went and found Project Mosaic, an Indigenous consulting firm who's local, and kind of paired them up to work on this context together. But with that, that was the first time we had to rework our budget because we needed to make sure that we were equally paying both of our consultants. And so we also then as staff took on some additional tasks to make that work as well. Next slide. So as I mentioned, community engagement, a huge part of this process. So we were really working on outreach to local organizations. We established a project advisory board. We have community connectors. And then we've been going out and doing events like a kickoff at the Denver Indian Center and booths at March Powwow. Next. And we decided one thing that was really important in this one is to more center oral histories. That's something that we heard early on from the community. We did some oral histories as part of the first one, but it was more traditional research supplemented by oral histories. And we kind of flipped that this time, that the center of the research would be the oral histories, and that then they would be kind of supplemented by additional research. Next slide. We also realized early on that just working with our local community really wasn't telling the full story. That while we, it was this fabulous to try to tell this story of all the hundreds of, American Indians from different communities across the US that are living here now, we also really needed to engage with the tribes that had historical and cultural ties to the area. So another thing where we went after some additional money and kind of increased our scope, and we had our first tribal convening in 2023, started with a reception with the mayor and on a Friday, then we had a whole day kind of collaboration on Saturday, finishing with some more discussion on Sunday and an event at the Denver Indian Center. Next slide. But we quickly realized in talking to those who came that that was just the beginning, and we really needed more time for that tribal engagement and to meet with tribal leaders. So we planned a second tribal convening for the following year, had a youth-led welcome at Tauble Memorial Grounds, had multiple days of discussion, included Denver City Council and the Denver American Indian Commission, and also had a greater role for youth. And this was really well received both by council, who was really enthused, as well as the community. So we're trying to continue that tradition in the city, having different organizations host. So this year, CASR, Climate Action, Sustainability and Resilience, will be kind of continuing the tradition and is having a tribal convening at the end of September. Next slide. So some of the themes we really heard throughout were the ideas of this being a homecoming for the tribal representatives, a chance to reconnect, to collaborate, to heal, and to have reconciliation. Next slide. So part of the other big things we were doing with this project is to try to be sure that everything was reciprocal, that we were giving as well as receiving. We weren't just taking information from the community, and that we were providing compensation to the community. So we had honorariums for those participating in the convenings. We covered travel and lodging expenses. We've been paying our community connectors, have gift cards for those doing oral histories, gifts for elders, and trying to create opportunities for tribal connections with the community and with local youth. Next slide. So trying to also kind of push the context boundaries. Traditionally, contexts have been organized around topics like labor, education, religion, and we've been trying, instead, we went out to the community and really based our kind of what our context chapters will be based on what we heard from the community and common themes. Next slide. So our kind of final project components, we've gotten thousands of responses from the community through different events that we've done. We've had 3 events at the Denver Indian Center. We've been at Denver March Powwow for 3 years. We've had 2 tribal convenings, did 17 oral histories. Those were conducted by Project Mosaic, our Indigenous consultants. 8 different funding sources, did a literature review, did a National Register nomination for the Denver Indian Center, which I wrote, which will be going to the State Review Board later this month. Had a youth art contest. We're also working on a documentary that will go along with this. And then we also have our context. So that context will be hopefully coming out for public review in October. So we would love your feedback. And also want to make sure, you know, like we're going to have a big public event, probably first weekend of February. We're still working out venues, but so we would also very much love it if you can come to see kind of the celebration of the project. And that's when we'll do the first screening of the documentary. Next slide. So here's kind of our updated timeline from the beginning. You know, so rest of this year, we'll be announcing our youth art contest winners soon, putting that final chapter up for review, then doing those final edits, moving forward with the National Register nomination, and then we'll have that release and celebration in early 2026. And now I'm going to turn it over to Becca.
Hello, Commission. Apologies I couldn't be there in person, but we're excited to be here and talking about what we've been working on for the last 3 years. And Abby's presentation was great. And it also gives the appearance that we were super thoughtful and knew exactly what we were doing the entire 3 years. And really, it's been a total story of learning lessons every day, listening to the community, stepping in at the wrong moment, putting our foot in the mouth, and really having to learn how to be humble and atone for our mistakes and be open and honest about them. So we thought we'd talk a lot about a lot of the lessons learned through this project. So next slide. You know, when we started this project and we were really just conceiving of it as a historic context, we had a goal in mind, which was to write a historic context. And quickly we realized that we needed some a really strong foundation and guiding principles that we could always lean back on whenever we were wondering how to proceed. And those guiding principles were really centered around equity, reciprocity with the community, and really listening to community needs. So yes, we had this goal of creating a historic context, and we had a grant to do that, but we needed to hear from the community what they actually wanted and what would benefit them. So every time we came to a crossroads or we were making a decision, we fell back on these principles to guide our decisions. Next slide. One really important thing that Abby alluded to is that it was super important to take our time and be patient. We all have grants and deadlines, and we know that we want to get those done. But in this case, rushing through this project would have caused more harm with the community, and it wouldn't have achieved a great outcome. this whole context has been centered on relationship building, and that takes a lot of time. You know, as a government entity, we are all very well aware that the government has caused harm to most Native communities across the country. And so gaining each other and to interact and how to trust one another takes a lot. Oh, did I cut out for a second?
You did.
Am I back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry, my headphones decided to die right now. So apologies. I was just saying that, you know, there's been a lot of harm between the government and Native communities. And so as a representative of the government, it was really important for us to slowly build trust so that we could have a good working relationship and have people feel comfortable sharing their histories and stories with us. Next slide. Another really big important thing was getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. There were a number of mistakes that we made along the way, and you just need to own that. You just need to accept that making mistakes is part of the learning process, and that, you know, there will be cultural differences, things like how do you interact with elders? How do you even run a meeting? And one example is we learned at the tribal convening that introductions are not a 2-minute go around the room sort of thing. In these Native communities, people really like to explain their whole backstory, where they're from, who raised them, where did they get their information, and that can take literally all morning. And it's really impolite to cut people off to get to an agenda. And so it was a big learning moment, especially for me. I like to have a strict agenda. To get comfortable with say, hey, it's going to take the time it's going to take. We're going to learn what we're going to learn, maybe in a way that we weren't expecting. But this sort of relationship building is really important, and it strengthens not only our relationship, but the context in the end. Next slide. Another big important lesson for us was challenging traditional expertise. We are all, you know, preservationists with many degrees in preservation, history, architectural history, things like that. And we were really confronted with the needs to challenge that expertise. One of the big components of the project was those oral histories that Abby mentioned. And you know, originally, I think the thought was that using these oral histories would be more about sort of adding color and examples to the historic context. And in the end, we really turned that all around and used the oral histories as the backbone of the historic context. And of course, you know, different people experience the world differently. So those oral histories often had different narratives, some that could be competing or opposed. And it was really important to us that we didn't place one above the other and instead presented them as two equally valid experiences. So really emphasizing that lived experience throughout the historic context. We also found that doing a literature review for this subject was really difficult and took a lot of effort because we had to review it through a lens that what's written down in the history books might not always be an accurate portrayal of what happened. Again, looking at those different perspectives, you know, how the US government might characterize something like the Sand Creek Massacre versus the lived experience of survivors of that massacre. We really felt that it was important to view the whole literature review through the lens of how people who experience these atrocities might feel. And so we really tried to have that come through in the literature review and focused on prioritizing Indigenous scholars and their work for the project. Next slide. Another important aspect was getting rid of jargon and all of the historic preservation terms that we're familiar with, and really talking about the project in a meaningful way so that the community could connect and identify with why this was important and what it could do for them, and not just why would it be a preservation plan that was then going to sit on a shelf. Next slide. And then in that preservation realm, though, it was really important to us to start looking beyond the built environment for areas of significance. When we started talking to the community, we say, oh, what's an important building to you? And of course, we did get some answers like the Denver Indian Center, but a lot of people said, no, it's not just the buildings, it's the landscape. It's the whole Front Range. It's Tall Bull Memorial Park and the landscape that you see from the park when you're there. We also heard a lot about events that build and support the community, like the Denver March Powwow, that these were really significant cultural events that were to be honored the same way that we honor the built environment. Next slide. And then finally, we really learned that implementation of the historic context was an act of reciprocity. So a lot of times when people write historic contexts, and even when we started thinking of this historic context, we thought, well, how is Landmark staff going to use this context as sort of part of the planning process? As we review demolitions, as we do neighborhood plans, things like that. But really, it was sort of a technical document that we could just use for reference. And we heard loud and clear from the community that that was not enough, that we needed to immediately have plans for implementing what we heard in the historic context. This can be done through things like historic designations, like the one that Abby wrote, creating land use policy, and then other city initiatives, one of which we heard and we'll talk about in the next slide. Sorry, Brittany, if you'll go forward, will be a cultural embassy that's currently on the Vibrant Denver bond. So, things that we heard about, there was a lot of concern and interest in what was happening around the confluence area of Cherry Creek and the South Platte. There's a lot of planning initiatives coming there. And how might we bring an Indigenous lens about what's significant about those rivers into land use policy? Next slide. So we have had a lot of community recommendations, and I'll just go over these briefly. Next slide. A lot of the community recommendations centered around continuing this relationship, not being done when the project is done. So maintaining a government-to-government relationship with tribes who visited as part of the tribal convening, but also having more informal methods of just conversations, Zoom calls, things like that, to just keep each other updated. And Abby mentioned repeating the convening as a yearly event so that we maintain these connections through time. A lot of people really emphasize the importance of revitalizing Native languages and incorporating those languages in the Denver streetscape, including place names on signage, like street signs, park signs, directional signs, things like that. And then a greater emphasis on traditional practices, focusing on stewardship and respect for the land by reintroducing Native plants in parks, traditional knowledge about maintaining and monitoring those plants and how they operate. And then things like creating places for the Native American community to come together and maintain and collect medicinal plants and sacred plants. And actually, there's a really cool project that Denver Parks and Recreation is currently working on in City Park that will turn part of City Park into a short grass prairie that will be stewarded by Native communities. And then having an arboretum in City Park as well, where the community can gather with some informational and educational signage to really start bringing
a Native perspective into the physical aspects of Denver. Next slide. A lot of emphasis on education, bringing Native history, including things that were discovered in the historic context, into school curriculums, hosting Native storytelling events, and collaborating with tribes on a permanent exhibit in some way that tells the story of the over 48 tribes that have historic ties to Denver. Recognition everywhere, the things like interpretive signage, and really going beyond this, the current land acknowledgement, and turning it into a living relationship between the tribes and between the tribes and the land. And then the final thing that I'll mention is there was a really strong urge to provide a gathering space for tribal representatives to come to Denver, a place where they could return home, to link the Denver community with people who may be traveling from further away. And the way that this has expressed itself so far is there is a proposal on the Vibrant Denver bond for a cultural embassy out by the airport that would serve as this gathering space for tribal representatives, both from afar and from the Denver community. I think there's one more slide.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, this is the last slide. So yeah, it's been an amazing project that really has taught us so much about community engagement, and putting our money where our mouth is, really implementing things that we've heard and trying to have an ongoing, established, respectful relationship with the community.
All right, thank you, Becca and Abby. Any questions from commissioners?
Thank you for the work and for the update.
Sure. And we hope you'll be able, make sure that you get details on the final event. Well, you'll be able to come.
Is there any like public document or report, like this is great.
Yeah, so it'll have a historic context document and it's about 175 pages. So it's a, so we're limited, so we could have covered so much more, but yeah, and that'll go out on our website for public review in October.
Okay.
And then we'll finalize it, do the graphic design and stuff, and then that'll be on our website and distributed early next year.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
All right, I believe that is the end of the meeting.
Well, you can't close it until after the session.
But I was going to, because you guys have to leave before we have executive session, right?
Yes, so we as staff cannot be here, so you'll be here with Adam for the executive session. So we'll be ending the Zoom if anyone's still on virtually and leaving the meeting.
We will give you some time to get out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Restroom.